Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bitcoin Beach. As we move into the future, things are changing fast. This country is providing open freedom, not only for us, but for the whole world. So thank you guys for coming. First, a big shout out to my brother, James, and Good Life Real Estate for sponsoring this event tonight. Thank you so much. I want to introduce a very special guest tonight. We have known each other for a long time. Welcome, David. An applause for David. David, tell us your story. So, I grew up poor. Nothing more than pizza was on our dinner table. Discovering Bitcoin changed my life. It freed me from paying tax. It freed my capital. It freed me from any borders. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Thank you, David. And thanks also to the Goethe-Institut for hosting our weekly Bitcoiner meeting. Bitcoin imperialism
is the freest form of capitalism.
Bitcoin imperialism
is the freest form of capitalism.
Bitcoin imperialism
is the freest form of capitalism.
Bitcoin imperialism Any other questions?
Cada transacción de criptomonedas genera más agua que una piscina estándar. ¿Cómo justificas eso?
So you're asking about the water consumption of each Bitcoin transaction. That is as much as a swimming pool. The first problem is the source of the study. The BBC quotes de Vries, an employee of the Dutch Central Bank. Central bankers have a vast interest in spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt about Bitcoin. the energy usage of Bitcoin does not come from transaction. It comes from mining companies producing Bitcoin.
As with any computer, cooling is essential for mining devices to work optimally.
Chaos brings opportunity.
Never let a good crisis go.
Chaos brings opportunity.
Never let a good crisis go.
Chaos brings opportunity.
Never let a good crisis go.
Looking for a holiday home on our Riviera.
Looking for 21 places to find a billionaire Bitcoin whale.
Looking for golden shimmer and all things beautiful.
Gone are the days of polarization, deep disorder. I am the Cripto Sirenas. I ban the unbanned. I bring salvation, peace, and all things beautiful. I smile when I see the golden shining. Dictator.
Quien no vino a bailar, que se vaya. Que se vaya. Que se vaya, 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 que se vaya.
Las ondas marinas de movimiento, turbio y mundo del agua, y el pez, en la agitación de la furia, tratando de encontrar la serenidad de la pureza, de los mantos subterráneos, aquellos que en el capitalismo neoliberal han tanto abandonado para satisfacer las necesidades invisibles de la avaricia del poderoso. En ese rincón me apunto, me encuentro, me cuestiono y me abrazo, recordando la agnosis del líquido de la vida, que por meses me brindó la certeza de la seguridad del vientre de mi madre, aquel que ahora, de adulto, recuerdo con tanta nostalgia. Déjalos comer cripto. Déjalos, movimiento monetario contemporáneo, un beso desintoxicará, un beso desintoxicará, un beso desintoxicará, poniendo la danza y el tacto de la carne, de los dedos, de la nube, de histéricos centro, 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 de histéricos centro.
¿Cómo te sientes acerca de los blockchains?
Honestly, I don't trust them. I don't understand why blockchains are connected. And will they be connected throughout their lives? Or will we lose contact at some point?
In the winter of 2022, the streets of Ottawa swelled with the noise of engines and rage, a theater of refusal. Not refusal of empire, not refusal of capital's tightening grip, but a refusal to be bound by the very social contract that made their privileges possible. How do you define freedom? They called this freedom. Freedom from mandates, freedoms from masks, freedom from caring for the crypt body, freedom from thinking of yourself as a multiplicity, as a relation to, not freedom for those excluded from the domain of rights, not freedom for the immune compromised, for those on the margins, the fugitives, but for those who had always understood freedom as a personal exemption, never as collective liberation. They was protesting against vaccine mandates for crossing the US border in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. This freedom convoy campaign later became a protest against general COVID-19 restrictions. In response to several crowdfunding campaigns that raised millions of dollars from Canadians and Americans associated with far-right political groups, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, invoked the Emergencies Act for 10 days. This declared that the government could freeze the payment service provider accounts of individuals suspected of being part of the convoy without needing to go through the court system. This also included platforms that use cryptocurrencies. A month or so later, a week into the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, long-term Putin op Pussy Riot singer Nadia Tolokonikova started a blockchain-enabled DAO and used the much-derided medium of NFTs to raise money for the Ukrainian resistance, announcing on her Twitter that blockchain was an important part of the fight against dictators. History is recursive. The tools that repress can be seized. The ledgers that police can be rewritten. Finance is never neutral. The ability to transact, to store value, to transfer wealth, invisible architectures of power. For too long, the state has wielded finance as a weapon. Palestine knows this. We still owe Palestine. Where embargoes and restrictions turn economic survival into resistance itself, where the Palestinian economy is trapped in a colonial dependency, a financial siege as real as the walls that carve the land into fragments, that sustain the little aid possible with an atrocious genocide. For sex workers whose labor is deemed illicit, whose bodies are surveilled through payment processes, crypto is not speculation, it is survival. For the undocumented, for the excluded, for those who exist in the interstices of legal recognition, what is dismissed as volatile, risky, marginal, is often the only means of financial agency left. How contested is our infrastructure? Are we drinking from poisoned wells? Let them eat crypto. Let them eat crypto. Blockchains, blockchains. The chain is never just a chain. It shackles, it binds. It is ledger and exclosure, infrastructure and confinement. It carves territories, it names debts. It decides who is free and who must pay. In Kosovo, much of the country's electricity is drawn from the Serbian grid. For that reason, for the poverty of my people and for the memory of ethnic cleansing, wartime rapes, and Albanian women in late Yugoslavia being sterilized, many in northern Kosovo have not paid electricity bills in the 20 years the war has passed. Free electricity and legal anarchy have turned the region into a Bitcoin mining hub. Electricity stolen as a claim to self-determination. But in 2021, the Bitcoin burden for the Balkan largest coal-fired power plant in Serbia was too much. It collapsed, the lights went out, an all-encompassing blackout, a return to darkness, a 60-day state of emergency. The state moved in, seizing mining rings. 8 months later, the geopolitical plague revealed itself. Serbian forces re-emerged on Kosovo grounds, explosions, roadblocks, history repeating once again, a loop of violence and extraction. South Africa, where economic fractures are legacies of settler rule, where inequality is currency, backed by centuries of theft and horrendous white supremacist violence, enter the Bitcoin missionaries. Economically divided cities in South Africa are a growing hotspot for Bitcoin ignitions. Modeled after El Salvador's Bitcoin Beach, Ekazi is a Bitcoin education center and surf school turned Bitcoin boot camp, which opened its doors in 2021 in a township close to Cape Town. Bitcoin is life, they be telling the kids. A digital baptism, a washing away of the old economic sins. A local Afrikaner, Herman Fifier, sets the stage. Funded by Paxful, by Built with Bitcoin, whites' hands saving black children by cutting them off from real money. They call it financial empowerment. They call it liberation. Yet the infrastructure itself remains out of reach. No stable internet, no economic security, no roadmap but the one that leads straight into the arms of crypto capital. Wallahi, this is the new frontier. Every empire has its evangelists. Paradoxically, the solution for energy shortages in the township should involve using massive amounts of energy to mine Bitcoin. The Bitcoin missionaries all pay homage to the grand leader, Mike Peterson, a miracle, a mysterious benefactor. 100,000 K worth of Bitcoin. Mike, the latest in a long line of white saviors, descends on El Zonte in El Salvador, rebrands us at Bitcoin Beach, a tax-free libertarian wet dream where even the poor can buy groceries in Bitcoin, where even the disenfranchised can participate in a new global order. But of course, groceries still have to be priced in dollars. And when the market crashes, the poor are left holding empty wallets. They call it hyper-Bitcoinization. They call it freedom. But freedom from what? And freedom for whom? Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey took the gospel to Marcy projects in Brooklyn. The Bitcoin Academy is in the ends, a community that needs housing, that needs stability. given crypto ads instead, and a 25 USD Bitcoin donation, like throwing a plate of chicken and rice at a starving man and calling it a revolution. Big man moves. Khalas. Niger. Trusted global charities such as Mercy Corps were pushing Ajera, a unique savings offer for Africans' unbanked populations, encouraging poor people to drop their life savings into a high-risk collateralized crypto bind with a 1,600K minimum deposit. Bankman-Fried's platform FTX was trusted like a saint. Empire always knows how to steal, wallahi. Savings turned into speculative fool. Bankman-Fried, the crypto messiah. Parading as a patron saint of effective altruism, they donate books, they fund flood relief, they sign up the unbanked, they convince the last believers that this time, capitalism has come to save, not to destroy. Then, implosion. FTX collapses. The unbanked are left even poorer, their savings swallowed by creditors, their communities wrecked, and the unpaid Nigerian FTX ambassadors be facing death threats from the very people they had to convince for the white man's juju. Big up to crypto scams though, because luckily the unbanked are financially unfortunate, but they ain't stupid. Crypto scams stealing money right back from where it has been stolen for centuries in the first place. May Allah bless the Yahoo boy. Bitcoin depends on divisive mysticism, using illusions of technological innovations and claims of magical powers to steal any political or economic ailment. Be banked into the cult of Web3, die and be reborn. Then refer 50 friends and claim a bonus. The empire once used railways, ports, camps to drain the land and chain the people, to extract, to move, to consume. The savage left out, left behind, left with nothing but the ashes of what was stolen. Now, the tools have changed. The mechanisms, though, remain the same one than the water torture my 6-year-old grandmother endured in the hands of Italian colonizers in Albania and that killed her sister. Instead of railways, we have Bitcoin mining machines. Instead of ports, we have crypto trading apps. Instead of camps, we have scammy financial literacy workshops for the poor. And yet, in the halls of leftist critique, with Jacobing and their ilk, the conversation does not move. It does not move forward. Blockchain, right-wing. Crypto, a libertarian delusion. They do not see the contradiction we reinforce. They do not see how our dismissal does not challenge empire, but merely cedes technological ground to the very forces we claim to oppose. And here, in this refusal, is a second kind of violence. Not the violence of white supremacist psychosis, but the violence of intellectual abandonment. The left, once the architect of radical infrastructures with its blips and gaps and fractures, now mocks the very tools that could be wrested from the hands of capital. Because the critique economy is not about building, it is about positioning. It is about who can speak with the most righteous certainty, who can denounce with the most decisive flourish, who can most eloquently pronounce the impossibility of the future. But what if we refuse this foreclosure? What if we rebuke to be locked in the reactionary cycle of rejection? Blockchain is not an ideology, it's an infrastructure. Infrastructures are always contested. They build, they shape, they fought over. They are bodies of water. To dismiss them outright is not a radical act. It is an abdication. It is the quiet retreat of those who have accepted their own exclusion, who believe the only viable strategy is to critique from the margins, never to intervene in the center. The question is not whether Bitcoin is good or bad. The question is who will mold it. We are living with the problem. We are both different and common. We are two truths at the same time. We're planetary assemblages. If humans remain agents for now, it is us, humanoids, who need to assume the responsibility for the systems in which we are enmeshed. It is unclear to me why this enmeshment would stop at the species boundary. When we piss antihistamines into waterways, like Astrid Minus said, those drugs have effects on hydroecologies, on flora and fauna, and on weather systems. They drip from your body too. When we cool Web3 mining devices, this water becomes the same wave that crashes into your face on your surfboard, fam. When we get bored of fossil fuel talk and become complacent with that Sharmuta orange fool at the center of empire, and his inauguration is causing a Bitcoin boom, we too let our hot breath into the thawing tundra that grounds Arctic communities. I do not mean this as an appeal to neoliberal individualism, Jan. I mean this as something where it's quite the opposite. I wouldn't want to shift the focus away from structures unto supposedly free, autonomous individuals. Spirti im, I mean this as a reminder of the great creator's words, Quran, Surah Al-Anbiya, Ayat 30:33. And we made from water every living thing. Will they not believe? Allahu Akbar.
Ocean time was also the realm of touch. Where sight failed and the tactile senses gained their full potential. One does not have a face or a surface. I want to invite you now to close your eyes. And take a deep breath in and out. In and out. In and out. Feel how the air moves through your body, how it is elevating your lungs, how it moves deep into your belly. Observe how the air moves through your whole body. And how not only this air moves, but also the water we contain. Because mostly we are made out of water. Imagine this water and air moving through your body, moving through the parts of your body that feel very stiff or tense. And how they release those parts. Now imagine the air and the water mixing on top of your head, creating a little wave that is twirling down behind your eyeballs into your mouth. Running down through your ribcage, touching your heart, running through your digestion system, grounding your hips into the chair, into the floor, grounding your feet into the floor. Now concentrate for a moment on what you can hear. All those noises that surround us, and distinguish whether they're close or far, from which direction they come from. Now put your hands onto your ears and block all those noises and listen to what you can hear from inside. Slowly remove your hands again. I really like doing that because it reminds me of being underwater. And I really love being underwater. I love diving deep. Being in this vast blue ocean, surrounded by this endless space, floating. Imagine we are floating there together, all of us. It's a group diving trip. It's very calm. Nothing to be afraid about. Who do we meet? Maybe a shark whale, or a deep sea creature, small one, no worries. Or maybe a poet.
Valle inestable, fugitivo, como pez de las profundidades, que ha salido a la luz y teme ver por primera vez. Valle de temblores, convulso, como quien recibió la carta del llamado a la guerra, como quien no quiere morir. Me llevas de la mano y me sueltas, con los ojos vendados, jugando a la gallina ciega en el laberinto de la historia. Toco musgos mullidos, verdes deben ser, como fue el primer fuego, fuego austral. La vida no viene de la semilla, sino de la bacteria, bacterias de terciopelo, reunidas en colonia, sobre una roca, aquella piedra antigua, asteroide o vestigio de volcán. Pruebo, todas las cosas serán susurrantes y con gusto a azúcar. Y aunque no exista lo dulce o lo amargo, ni los hombres que se tuestan en la espalda en la zafra o en los campos de algodón recogiendo una suave flor blanca de rojas espinas, tampoco hay las mujeres que oxidan sus manos entre tomates envenenados o campos de fresas. Huelo, chocolate, mancha oscura que una vez fue semilla o moneda, olor entre hojas de papel, un regalo, un poema. Escribí un libro, no lo sé, pero tampoco sé quién te mató, solo sé dónde ocurrió. Llama de esteráceas, pétalos que fractales fueron geometría antes que flor, verde es la lava del color que consume el fuego, la semilla que explotó en el aire incendiada por la violencia, bromelias que no serán bromelias, tilisandias que flotaron antes de la ley de gravedad, flores aéreas porque no existía la superficie y el espíritu del universo se movía sobre las aguas y no era pez ni trilitbote, amarantáceas con pelos y tentáculos, flores que pudieron tener atletas y no pétalos, tal vez monstruos. El polen está aquí entre ceniza y piedra volcánica, marcado en las paredes como un grafiti antiguo. En el siglo III, la caldera de Ilopango hizo erupción. Su magnitud fue la de un hectatombe. Su lava borró el orden inicial de la Tierra. Su ceniza cubrió miles de vegetaciones, kilómetros a la redonda. Vegetaciones desconocidas. No hubo tiempo para nombrarlas. He estado excavando con las manos sin más instrumento que mis uñas, y donde temía encontrar cadáveres, encontré surcos. En las paredes internas de la tierra, capas de ceniza. Tierra blanca, joven, dirán los científicos. Encontré semillas. ¿Es posible que no las hayan calcinado las lavas superpuestas por los siglos? ¿Es posible pensar que aún algo florece aquí? Muchos años después, los arqueólogos nos dieron los nombres de lo que subyacía como en forma transitoria de otra cosa, como androginia de plantas y mamíferos, como cosa que es y no será, y tampoco era. Ahora yo, con las uñas negras de tierra, sin más ley que mi lengua, te dicto sus nombres. Ambrosía, mimosa, siempre vivas. Guárdalos cerca de tu corazón y vuelve a pasarlos por él cuando las encuentres en tu camino. Como una simple hierba, míralas con reverencia. Poblaron la tierra antes de que existiera el lenguaje, la impronta de una hoja, de tantas eras como código vegetal. Narra un espacio desconocido cuando la tierra no era esta y verde era su ley. Improntas de hojas grandes como las manos de un agricultor y diminutas como la de un recién nacido, antes, mucho antes de las huellas en las cavernas. Manos de mujeres no sabían que ser mujer era el silencio, y un lenguaje sin nombrar les permitía estirar la mano sobre la piedra, pared antes de ser pared, y marcar su huella. Yo también he tenido hojas en las manos, plantas que vivirán miles de años. Me las dio un muchacho que no me quería, solo las extendió como un mandato. 8,000 años han vivido estas flores, le expliqué, y aún estamos aquí, nosotros sin amarnos. Antes, los volcanes, la erupción, el cataclismo, lava y ceniza, no existían aún las palabras, y es bellísimo imaginar esa vegetación desaparecida para siempre, incluso antes de ser nombrada. No era este el lenguaje, llamas asteráceas, estrellas en pétalos, capítulos y polen. Hoy brotan de la Patagonia a la Antártida y en las manos de las gentes enamoradas como virus de la inflorescencia. Verde es la lava en su brutal belleza, no es el limo, lo húmedo que hace brotar sus musgos, es la bacteria que activa millones de bosques. Somos flor y enfermedad. Gracias.